to start by welcoming you all to our Board of Education Candidate Information Session. So for our viewing audience, we do have a live audience here with us as well, and we want to welcome you and thank you for spending some time with us this evening. So we've prepared about an hour's worth of a presentation. We're going to start with a welcome, some introductions of our panel, and then a brief district overview that I will facilitate. And I am Casey Summers, proud superintendent of District 38. So thank you all for being here tonight. To my right is Miss Vicki Wood, my executive assistant, as well as the Board of Education secretary. So she will be providing details on our November election, as well as some additional information on the call for nominations and more of the logistics that are involved with the candidacy and election process. And then to my left, your viewing right, is our board president, Mrs. Tiffany Upchurch. So she will be sharing some information on board member characteristics, qualities, and different reflections in her tenure being a board member. And then we'll also be joined by Mr. Matt Clausen, who's running just a little bit late, and he will be here to provide some additional board member insight as well. And then we will have time at the very end for any questions, and we'll do our best to answer whatever questions you all have. So again, thank you for your time, your engagement. Thank you for also your support. We wanted to just give you this as a starting point so that you understand how we are operationalizing the work and our focus that we have been really developing, co-developing over the past few years. This happens to be my fifth year, going into my fifth year as superintendency, and so any organization, we know the strength and the value of having a strong vision, mission, strategic plan, and organizational values, and all the alignment that comes from that. So our mission in Lewis Palmer School District is to develop a partnership with our parents, the community, and educators that aspires to prepare our students to be successful learners, productive citizens, and caring contributors to society. And we do that by developing each student's talents in a safe, nurturing environment and to inspire a lifelong love of learning. And so we're capstoning that with a very quick and hopefully easy to remember vision statement, which is elevating the futures of every student every day. And we have 6 priority pillars as part of our strategic plan, which I'm going to highlight here for you. So those are safe and healthy schools, academic excellence, valuing our people, operations and facility planning, fiscal stewardship, relationships, and communication. And within each of those priorities, we have strategic actions that we are working toward implementing. And then this year, we're going to be very intentional about establishing measures of success so that we have really clear benchmarks as to how these priorities and the different goals that we have established within help guide us and guide our community to know what does success actually look like. It also helps spur continuous improvement in our system because we always want to look at ways for us to continuously improve and get better. We also are very intentional about having organizational values which help drive our collective behaviors and actions that you can expect, not only really from our staff members, but again, as we work in the spirit of partnership with our community, how do we make sure that we're modeling and practicing integrity, respect, connection, growth, and excellence? And so we're going to be spending more time as we work not only through our work sessions, but also our various board meetings and different interactions with our community to really operationalize not only the priority pillars, but also our values and how those live out in our organization. And then also something that you may have been attuning to over the course of the past several months, and this has actually been a 2-year process for us, is we want to be very deliberate on being specific about how our students are prepared for what happens beyond high school. So District 38 is aspiring to develop graduates who are confident and ready to serve as productive, adaptive, caring, and balanced contributors empowered to create positive impact. And that's, as you can see, just a few more words that we've developed as part of a roadmap. But really what we want to emphasize here is these are skills and competencies that go beyond just academic performance and proficiency, that are really the skills that are going to enable our students to be successful in college, career, military, or whatever they choose to pursue as they move forward and move on from our system. So that includes being a navigator, a contributor, a problem solver, connector, and a communicator. And you can see some of the different words and how those are exemplifying different skills and different traits. And so we're just beginning that work to define more of how these competencies live and how they're experienced in our classrooms, out in the community, as we're supporting our students in different opportunities and different experiences that they have. And then we also felt it was very important, if we're going to be intentional about naming what we're supporting our students to be able to develop and achieve as they're preparing for future life success, we also need to be very reflective as practitioners and as educators to make sure that we are doing our part to really provide the types of supports that our students need in that endeavor. So District 38 is providing educators with the time, resources, encouragement, and professional development necessary to support them feeling successful, valued, fulfilled, and balanced in work and life. And so we identified 4 different traits of our educators that are a synthesis of what that looks like. So to be a connector, a differentiator, a professional, and a facilitator. And I should mention, I don't know that I explained this very good at the beginning, this is the fruits of work that took multiple stages of feedback and engagement with multiple members of our community, including students, staff, parents, community members. This is really important, I think, to our business community, and really being good stewards, not only of our resources within our system, but again, how do we make sure that there's a fabric of success that you can experience and see, from a perspective of whatever stakeholder group you may be coming from. And again, this all comes back to how we want to elevate every student every day. So that gives us just a nice brief overview, and I could spend a lot more time unpacking this, and this will be a lot of our work. In fact, one of our first items at our August 8th special meeting, which is just around the corner, is to spell out more of those specific strategic actions with our board and work toward establishing, as I mentioned earlier, those goals and those measures that we can be accountable for, because the board, and you're going to be learning more about this as we go through tonight, is really about setting the direction and the expectation of our system. And then through the sole employee as the superintendent, I'm ultimately accountable to make sure that we are doing our part in the organization. Now, of course, we cannot do that alone or independent of, again, the fabric of our community. So it's, again, an honor and a privilege to continue to serve and to do this in a manner that really expresses what we refer to as a strong governance team. And I think you're going to be hearing a little bit more tonight about how that team is currently operating, and then the opportunity that we have, obviously, with a big election right around the corner. So we do have 5 district seats, and 4 of those are up for election here in November. And we've starred each of the districts that you can see on this slide, and then we actually spell that out in terms of how long is the actual board chair, board member or director term. So for District 1, that will be a 2-year term. District 2, 4, and 5 will all be 4-year terms. The reason District 1 is a 2-year term is because that seat was actually vacated by Mr. Chris Taylor back in February. So there was an appointment to that vacancy that was fulfilled by Mr. Chris Norris. And great timing, Mr. Clausen. Welcome in. Just to catch you up, sir, we are just setting the groundwork for our presentation this evening. Thank you for being here. And there will be some time for some more engagement as we work through our presentation. So those, again, that 2-year term is a function of the 4 years that Mr. Taylor was voted in on when he first assumed the seat was actually synonymous also with Mrs. Upchurch's year term, which expires in 2025. And so the 4-year terms for District 2, 4, and 5 are all terms that will expire then in 2027, so 2023 to 2027. And we can unpack more of those details as we go. We are a director district boundary system, so you can see here on the map, and I know it's probably not easy to see exactly where all the streets fall, but we have a very blown up map that's on our third floor that you can look at, or on the website. This is also available where you can hone in a little bit more. It is important to note that the board member or the board candidate that may be running for a specific director seat does have to reside in that specific area. And Mrs. Wood is actually going to talk to us a little bit more about that right now. So I'm going to hand the presentation off to her, and I'll let you run with it from there.
Okay. Again, I'm Vicki Wood, Dr. Summers' secretary, as well as secretary to the board. And in June, the board elected me to serve as the designated election official for this November election. Most important, probably in your mind, will be the timeline for the election. I'm going to briefly cover some of the dates on this timeline and the activities associated with the election process. August 9th is, in accordance with state statute, the first date that the district can announce our intent to seek candidates for these 4 available board seats. So on August 9th and again on the 16th, we will be publishing a public notice in the Tri-Lakes Tribune in the back legal sections, explaining that call for nominations, and then just a little bit of the requirements for the candidates, with this next important item that you can pick up petition packets from me on August 9th. Beginning August 9th, that's in accordance with state statute. And then the next important date to keep in mind will be that those completed petition packets and all the necessary documentation and other forms must be submitted, returned to me by September 1st. Many of those do have to be notarized, but that will be by end of business day on Friday, September 1st, 4 p.m. But between August 9th and the remainder of the month, you can pick up petition packets anytime between those business hours of 8 and 4. If someone, for some reason, is interested in entering into the election process as a write-in candidate, there is different information available, and they should certainly seek me out, and we can discuss that and do that necessary documentation. But the deadline to do that submission is September 5th. September 8th is a busy day. We'll start that morning at 9:30 in my office upstairs here in the administration building. And the actual determination of the ballot order is not alphabetical by name, as you might think. It is by lot drawing. And that will be explained in another slide, I guess. And also on the 8th is the deadline for the district publishing candidate information on our website. In accordance with statute, we do have to list a candidate's name, residential address, mailing address, email, website information. And also on the 8th then, I do have to submit the ballot order to the county, and I will do that by end of their business day on Friday, September 8th. And of course, November 7th is election day. Petitions, when you do pick up your petition, I will go through some very detailed instructions with you. There are some very specifics that must be followed regarding distribution and turning in your petition packet. But for school districts with greater than 1,000 students, the petitions are required to be signed by 50 eligible electors within the district. And we will highly encourage you to get at least 70 signatures. It is inevitable that some of those signatures will not be valid, even though people insist that they are a current voter and they voted in the last election, but there are multiple reasons that a signature might be invalidated. And to be honest, I'm pretty lenient when I look through that. If we can at all figure out that it is a qualified elector signature, we'll go with it. Part of that nomination packet also includes the notice of intent to be a candidate, the acceptance of nomination, and an affidavit stating your qualifications for office. All of those documents will need to be returned to me by the September 1st close of business deadline. And I will spend some time with you certainly when you pick up petition packets to answer any questions and to go over all of this in very much detail, so you're absolutely confident in the process. To be a valid candidate, as Dr. Summers explained a bit earlier, you must be a current resident and registered elector of the school district for at least the past 12 consecutive months. And you must also be a current resident of the director district that you choose to represent, either 1, 2, 4, or 5, as of the time of the election. So if you are in the process of maybe moving to a different director district, we would need to discuss that further and determine which district you would be representing on the ballot. This is just a bit more detail about that lottery drawing, and it is truly as simple as all the candidates for a specific seat will write each name on a slip of paper, put it in a hat, basket or bucket, and draw them out one by one, and your position on the ballot will be determined at that time, and any candidate will be invited to join if they want to step into the office for a few minutes and see that process at work. That will be the morning of September 8th. This is just just a sample of what the ballot will look like. We have entered into an intergovernmental agreement with the county elections department, and according to their regulations, they will dictate the format of the content of the ballot, and it will simply look something like this for each of our director positions, noting the 2-year term for Director District 1, and then the 4-year terms for Director District 2, 4, and 5. And here again is some more information about the candidate details that do have to be posted on the website by September 8th. And if for some reason you have personal email address that you would not want shared publicly, might be a good idea to consider creating an email account just for the purposes of this election, where you could receive information that might be shared on a candidate website, but it would be what we publish on our website for people to be able to contact you and to get more information about your candidacy. There is quite a bit of information and detailed instructions regarding filing with the Secretary of State, but as soon as you have submitted your notice of intent with me to be a candidate in this election, you do have to go to the Secretary of State's Tracer campaign finance reporting system and submit a candidate affidavit that simply attests that you have familiarized yourself with campaign finance law and regulations. So you want to spend some time perusing that Secretary of State campaign finance website. Get yourself familiar with their regulations, deadlines, calendar. It's pretty easy to navigate. And I do have a slide here we can go to in just a moment and take a brief look at that. And I will come back to that. If you do intend to receive contributions or donations, you will be required to create a campaign committee. If you simply choose to run any campaign expenses with your own personal finances, you do not have to create a committee. But regardless, either way, you are required by the campaign finance calendars to submit expenditure and contribution reports on a regular basis. And all that is explained within the Secretary of State website. I'm just going to click here briefly. You'll see the tracer system here. And within that, here's the candidate affidavit you will have to file. Some information about that. And again, that must be completed and submitted electronically via this online tracer system within 10 days of declaring your candidacy with the district. Here's information about the committee registration and just some basic information about learning to use Tracer. So you probably want to, if nothing else, Google Colorado Secretary of State Campaign Finance, and it will take you to this homepage where you can begin to peruse and gather your information so you're well prepared to conduct a campaign. And we already discussed that. I think that's all I have for you at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I want to first start by saying that it is absolutely a great pleasure to be here and welcome and say thank you for your consideration. to become a Lewis Palmer D38 Board of Education Director, and we're excited in your interest in pursuing that position. I also want to formally introduce Director Matt Clausen. Mr. Clausen has served with us for many, many years, and he is no longer eligible to run, so his director seat will be filled by a new board director. And I actually before I start, want to say thank you so much for your service, and I want to allow you for reflection first.
Well, first of all, thank you for being here. Several quotes that I've read throughout the years says the purest form of democracy is serving on the school board. And school board is really where the rubber meets the road. I have 5 kids, all of which went through District 38, so I had a vested interest. And one thing that I've enjoyed is being on the school board. It's nonpartisan. And my position was it's all about the kids. Every decision, every action we take, is it in the best interest of the kids? So I want to commend each one of you for even considering serving on school board. It's a lot of time, it's a big commitment, but the rewards are significant.
Well said. Actually, you took words right out of my mouth. There's many organizations and individuals in this community that make an impactful difference to our students and our schools. And by becoming a Board of Education Director, you have an opportunity to give back to the community and impact the quality of education and strengthen the democracy in our nation. Folks who serve on the board should be commended and appreciated for the time and the talent that they give. It makes such a difference in our schools, in the lives of our students, our staff, and indeed this community. Dedication, leadership, thoughtful decision-making, collaborative problem-solving are all paramount to good school board leadership. And the characteristics of a successful school board member, obviously we all come from all different walks of life, and effective school members, however, we all share the following characteristics. We have a desire to serve the community and the children. That means we work we ensure every deliberation, decision, and action reflects the interests of every student every day, and that every student is just as important as another. We have the ability to work as a member of a team, including an open mind and ability to engage in and give and take. We work as a policy governance team. Sometimes that work is to listen, sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree, we deliberate, but we remember that the work that we do, once we've just made a decision, that we accept that decision as a group. It doesn't mean that you have to accept it as an individual, but once the decision's made, we make those decisions. Willingness to spend the time required to become informed and to do the homework needed to take part in the effective school board governance. This is a non-paid, very time-consuming, but very rewarding position. It can be upwards of 30 hours a week. We attend about 2 meetings a month. We are involved in various community committees and community activities and events, from the Tri-Lakes Chamber to our District Accountability Committee, and it takes a lot of time to study up and do our homework. So the willingness to take time to basically do our homework. There's a joke, and it's not a joke, that school board members, when you become an elected board member, it's like drinking from a fire hose. And indeed, that is true. All of a sudden, overnight, you're expected to be an expert on school law and understand finances and be a public relations person with your community, and remembering that our one sole employee is our superintendent. Respect for the needs and feelings of other people, a well-developed sense of fair play, and the ability to listen and communicate well. You're obligated to express your opinions and on issues, and so are your other fellow board members, and so are your stakeholders. Your stakeholders have a right to redress and a right to communicate with you. And so to carefully listen and respectfully listen is important, and it's an important part of the role of Board of Education Director. What does it mean to be successful, and how do I prepare? Well, actually, that's how does it mean to be successful? It's a desire to serve the community and its children, the ability to work as a member of a team, including an open mind and ability to engage in give and take, a willingness to spend time required. We just did this one. This didn't go forward. There we go. There we go. Sorry.
I can move yours if that's helpful. There you go.
Oh.
That one's to that one.
That's why we didn't claim I was Thank
That's
you.
why he's in charge.
That's why he's in charge. Thank you, Dr. Summers.
No problem.
Now I got it. I thought this did it. Anyone who plans to run for school board should acquire a basic understanding of the school district, including vision, which is the purpose of our school. What is it we're trying to accomplish? We're keeping students as our focus. And as a board, we adopt a shared vision based on our community's beliefs to guide us. We have excellent communication and we don't always, but we try to have excellent communication and human relations skills. And that's also important for accountability as well. What do we do and who does what? Our superintendent is our sole employee, as I had stated, and so knowing the different roles of the board, we govern through board policy, and knowing the role of our superintendent and what our superintendent's team does. Confidence, the ability to agree disagreeably, a strong sense of fairness and justice, and a desire to govern through policy, and to understand the laws that govern us, and the laws in our intergovernmental agreements is also an important part of that. So how do I prepare to serve on my board? Anyone who plans to, this is what I was saying earlier, anyone who plans to run should acquire a basic understanding of the school district. So our strategic vision and our goal, what is our purpose? What Dr. Summers shared earlier, that is our vision and our goal. And so the decisions that we make are guided by those visions. So for example, if we're deciding on, are we going to approve another bus, how does that fit into the vision? Organization, who does what? Again, that's that relationship between you and your superintendent, you and your fellow board members, and the roles that the leadership team and the roles that are in the buildings. You're not a manager in the team, you're not, you don't run the schools, you want to make sure that the schools are being run effectively. Finance, income and expenses. This is not a quick read. So you can find resources as you're preparing on our financial transparency page, and the Colorado Department of Education also has those same information. You can learn about Colorado School Finance 101 and why Colorado is one of the most unique and underfunded states in the United States, and how that affects us locally. From Tabor to Gallagher to Amendment 23, how did we become upside down where our state share and our local share is different? That's all important information and guides us when we're making our decisions. And who makes those decisions? How is our funding determined at the state level to down to where we are? What does per pupil funding mean? Like I said, it is it's if you want to fall asleep while you're looking for something to put you to sleep at night, go ahead and read some school finance and the budget. Government. Federal, state laws, regulations, and local school board policies. In full disclosure, I am a full proponent of local control, and that's at all levels. So to that end, as a board member, understanding our state constitution and our legislation, it's important, and that's also important for advocacy, so you can advocate for our students and our staff and our schools and our community. So you can advocate all the way at the state level down to the local level. Board procedures. How do we operate? We operate through Robert's Rules of Order. We operate through board policy. How do those policies come to be? How do we vote on them? Attend a board meeting to see how it is that we operate and what our procedures are. We work as a group, and we work in public meetings. And under the law, any decision we make must be done in public under sunshine laws. So any decision that comes through, you can see online. We have to have accountability and transparency. That's very important. So attend a board meeting and learn how we operate and how we are as a team and how we interact with each other. And a great board candidate understands the relationship of the school board to the state, the community, the superintendent, and the role of the individual board member as a board member. So any decision we make, we don't make decisions as one individual. We are representatives of our school board, but we cannot, as one individual, make a decision for the board. Only the board can make a decision as a board. So yeah, there's lots of resources out there to research and learn. And if you want, you can also make an appointment with our superintendent, Dr. Summers, and you can always reach out to one of us board members and ask us questions as well. And we're always open to receiving input, feedback, thoughts, as well as if you have any questions, we would love to share. What does it mean to be on the Board of Education? The role of the school board, I'm going to fast forward actually to, it's not. Yes, there it is. So how are school boards run? We're run through governing bodies, meaning that we can only take action by a majority vote that is at a legally called meeting. We work with 5 major objectives, which is our vision, our organizational structure, accountability, support, and community leadership and advocacy. Our community members are who serves on the board. Our responsibilities are to establish a vision and goal for district schools, hold meetings in public, listen and engage with input from the public, communicate with the public on our work, adopt our annual calendar, adopt our budget. We set standards for our superintendent and for ourselves. We hire our superintendent, and we approve contracts for teachers and outside volunteers, and so on and so forth. All of the work that we do as a board comes also from the recommendations from our educated staff and our superintendent, his team, and then those recommendations are made to us, and then we deliberate and make those decisions. What we don't do is we're not responsible for hiring the faculty. That is the responsibility of our sole employee, our superintendent and his team. We do not manage the district. We work to ensure the district is managed well. School boards do not do the work of the superintendent. We have our visions, we have our goals, we want accountability, but ultimately it is up to our superintendent to ensure that our policies are being lived out as we set forth. There's more information you can find from the Colorado Association of School Boards, and that's the website right there. I just wanted to let you see what it looks like. There's also information on our El Paso County Clerk Elections Department. And at this time, I want to share with you a vision that was shared with me when I was on this board. I've been on this board for 6 years, and when I first got on there, and it really was like drinking from a fire hose. And what I found overnight was what many board members find overnight, that suddenly your job, it affects you and your family and your job. You find that your family, your friends, people you've never even met before who you don't know will advocate and come to you and speak to you at Safeway or at Back East, or if you're walking your dog down the street and they want to have a conversation about the state of the school district. So they may reach out in technology. So your job is almost people think that your job is a 24/7 job. So preparing for yourself and your family and understanding that the service is rewarding, because at the end of the day, it's doing what's best for our kids. And in this world right now, education is paramount. It's at the spear of what's important in the United States. And so the job of Board of Education Director, there's so much work and so much good that comes out of it, and it is rewarding. It's tough work, but it's good, rewarding work. So this is what was shared with me. A true leader has the confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, and the compassion to listen to the needs of others. They do not set out to be a leader, but become one by the quality of their actions and the integrity of their intent. And that's by Douglas MacArthur. And with that, are there any questions at this time for anybody? Yes.
I'm more on the practical side. So you said 30 hours. What does that look like? Like, can you work? If I worked full time, would I be able to do this?
Can I take that question? I think Ms. Upchurch said up to 30 hours.
Right.
And really, there's two primary meetings that you have per month. You have the work session, then you have the board meeting. The work session usually lasts anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 to 3 hours. The Board of Education meeting is anywhere from about an hour and a half to 3 hours. The Board of Education meeting is in the evening. The work session meeting was put in the day, quite frankly, to accommodate my schedule, but my guess is the Board of Education would have some flexibility. I've been on the board for over 8 years. I was appointed, and then I've ran for 2 terms. And my profession, it's ebbs and flows. There's times that I could devote a lot of time to this position. There's other times that I just barely get by. And, you know, that's consistent with many of my other board members. So if you're working full-time and have ecclesiastical or other professional endeavors, this is something that you can manage. And Miss Upchurch did point out, you know, the perception that sometimes it feels like drinking from a fire hose. It's a lot of information. But, you know, we have a great leadership team. We have fellow board members. So don't feel that it's overwhelming or insurmountable task. It's manageable.
Yeah, and I will piggyback off of that too. When I said drinking from a fire hose, that's that learning curve. And it depends on the agenda. Budget time always takes a little more time because you're wanting to do your due diligence to ensure transparency and accountability. But other times it may be a thin agenda, and you can study up on and ask all your questions ahead of the meeting. And so that may only take a couple hours. It's really what you put into it as well. What's that saying that many hands make light work? So we're a team of 5. So as a team of 5, we're taking on different aspects and using our time and our talent. It helps lighten that load. And we rely on our superintendent and his team as well. So don't be intimidated by that.
I don't have a vote. That's why I'm smiling.
You know, that's a wonderful question. Sometimes it depends. You know, being on the school board is nonpartisan, and really the moral compass that we have on the school board is what's in the best interest of the kids.
So is it usually one? Are you guys united there?
Not, yeah, not always. I would say.
It depends on the issue.
It depends upon the issue. You know, the last board meeting, I was the only one that wasn't supporting a few issues, and that was based on financial issues, not necessarily any other reason. You know, each board member has his or her own say, and at times we're on the same page of music. Other times we're not.
It's important that each board member has the freedom to express their thoughts and their opinions, and their values should be your guiding guidepost when you vote. And this particular board, we have pretty strong decorum and respectful dialogue. We don't always agree, but we disagree respectfully. And then sometimes our votes are unanimous. It just really also depends on the issue. I don't think if you said, are we a contentious board, I don't think that that's the definition of D38.
So do you think that there's a lot of political things that are entering in the school district via the state that you guys have to vote on?
Sure. You want
Go ahead.
when we're looking at policy, some of our policy has to be driven by law. And we still do have state law. We have the Colorado Department of Education. We have local laws, and we have federal laws that we still have to abide by as law-abiding. One of our duties is to uphold the law, and we swear an oath to the law and the Constitution.
So there shouldn't be any division when it comes down to something with the law, right?
Correct. It may be a division in our own personal values or thoughts, but when it comes to the operations and discerning the a budget or discerning a policy or discerning. That's why I'm also a big proponent of local control, because at the end of the day, sometimes we may or may not agree or disagree with what is coming towards us. And so how do we navigate that as board members and as a system and as a community? Because we represent the entire community, not just one group or one idea or one thought process. We represent every student in our school district.
Can I jump in and say something? Yeah. I've been in this position 16 going on 17 years, and every year without fail, I've been so proud to serve this board and this administration. You cannot tell from their comments at board meetings what their political stance is. We have been truly a nonpartisan board. We have great relationships within the administrative team. The board members have been able to always talk and work things out, get along. They know that they can come to the administration with any questions, any lack of understanding, any ideas. So between that pursuit of honest, open communication and then their respect for one another at board meetings, I have never encountered anything inappropriate amongst them. And they will openly share their own opinion. They are always faithful to say, this is my opinion as a board member. I am not speaking on behalf of the board. And they may say why they perhaps disagree with the policy or something that's being considered for implementation. But they do not automatically assume they have to be a united front of a 5-0 vote. They are not hesitant to vote no when the rest of the board is voting yes, if they feel that's necessary and appropriate. But I could probably look back at the board and I would not know their political affiliation.
So can I just make a comment? Thank you. I mean, that's important to be able to do what's best for the kids. You know, from, like I said, I've been to a board meeting in eons. And so thank you.
Yeah. And I should have said that this board is awesome at always bringing things back to what is best for our kids. And sometimes they will do that in the midst of discussions of, wait a minute, let's get back to what do we need to be doing for our kids instead of getting off in the weeds, chasing anything that may not be appropriate.
And I'll add too that even we encourage and want feedback and want comments, and we want to hear from our constituency and our community of stakeholders. And that's all stakeholders. That's our community members, which is our taxpayers, our teachers, our students. And it's important that they know that that their voice is heard. And that can drive some of our decisions when we're trying to be deliberate. And so when we make our votes, we still respect the integrity of the outcome of that vote. And I personally have voted not with the majority of my fellow board members on several occasions, but I still respect the integrity of the process and the integrity of the vote. Did I answer your question?
So sorry, I have another question taken over here. Is the vote done in a public setting? It is.
Yes, the vote is done in a public setting. No board business can be conducted outside of a public setting. And part of the role as a board member is if two or more, if we have a quorum, if more than 3 board members are in attendance where a decision is being made, then we have to publicly announce that once we are elected as board members. So you'll see often if there's a committee meeting or a coalition meeting, you'll only see 2 board members try to be there just to make sure that we're protecting that integrity. Not that there's anything wrong with more than 2 being there, but we just want to make sure that the integrity is protected and that accountability and transparency is there, and that sunshine law is there.
That said, if I could just add a thing that I do think speaks to a little bit of the time commitment and what's involved prior to a board meeting is that there is an opportunity, I should say, to really get informed on what are the specific issues that are coming up on a future agenda and making sure that we can spend that time. So I have the privilege and the opportunity to meet often with our board members depending on whatever that might be, or different members of our team. And so the budget is always a great example. If there's an item that is going to take a really deep dive, we don't necessarily want to spend hours on end in a public meeting. So that could be as simple as setting up an individual meeting. Actually, we can meet with up to 2 members of the board at any given point in time and still be in compliance with, that's not a meeting, there is no decision that's being made, but just out of efficiency, we may be looking really closely at a particular policy, or we're going line by line in a budget and involving our chief business officer. So that's some of the behind the scenes work that helps then prepare the board for ultimately what that decision is that's going to be made, because obviously it will take time to deliberate within a board member's conscience. Now, we'll never really have the conversation about how are you going to vote. We don't really go in that direction. It's just what questions do you have and what information do you need to be informed on ultimately what is the task or the ask in front of the board at any given point in time. And so that's really purposeful agenda setting, which Mrs. Upchurch and I, actually, if you're the board president, you do spend a lot of time in conversation. We're probably on text or the phone. I would go so far as to say almost daily. I try not to ever be a nuisance, but I also want to make sure that there's no surprises for our board. And if there's just information that we need to be able to share with the whole board, I think it's also important that anything that one board member receives, we'll do an FYI for the rest of the board and say, hey, by the way, we had this meeting, we had this conversation, here was the topics that were discussed, or here was the information that was covered, just so that everybody can be on the same page. That's a really important element and an expectation that I think is appropriate to ensure that I don't treat one board member differently than another board member, that everyone has access and the information that they need. Anything you'd add to that?
I would. There's something that Mr. Clausen taught me, and that is anytime we're speaking as a board member, we're speaking as one individual board member. We're speaking from our own perspective. We're not speaking for the board, and we're not making decisions for the board, unless the board has delegated that. For example, I am I'm the board liaison currently for our district accountability. We call it PCAC now, which is stands for Parent Community Accountability and Advisory Committee. So I will share what's happening with the board. But if there's a question launched at me of, well, where does the board stand on this? I can't speak for the board, but I can say this is the deliberations that we've had thus far.
And just to build off of that, I think a really good question from the superintendent to potentially an individual board member, although all of our individual board members are really fantastic. They never really put me in this position. But if there is one board member that's saying, I want to see this happen, a really good question back is that the will of the board? And I think that opens the conversation up to make sure that is that something that is being directed by the whole board or a majority of the board, or is that something that one person just really wants to see happen? And so we just have to be very deliberate about, again, that important relationship of, I think one of the tendencies, and it's kind of just a thing in a community where you would expect the board member should be able to fire that person that did something that they maybe shouldn't have done, whatever the situation might be. And board member has to respond with, I'm not in a position to hire or fire any employee. Now, they ultimately approve the recommendations that are made in terms of personnel action. So that is an action that the board takes at every meeting. We actually have a personnel action report. So yes, the board is in a position to ultimately make that decision one way or another. But again, that is a full board vote, not a single person saying, okay, yep, that's what has to happen as a result of A, B, or C things.
Yes.
A couple questions on what Dr. Summers elaborated on. So just setting an agenda, generally speaking, who or what body does that? How far in advance of a meeting is it done? Are there normally working sessions or sessions to discuss? And then is there encouragement to look at outside resources to educate a member heading into either a working session or a meeting?
Great question. And Mrs. Upchurch, feel free to chime in with this. So primarily it is a shared, shared responsibility between the superintendent and the board president to ensure that we are setting the agenda collaboratively So we actually set up a monthly meeting where we hone in on what are those specifics. We do spend time in our work session agenda, as well as any regular meeting, to solicit any topics that may come from the whole board. So certainly if somebody wanted to initiate something, we would say, yep, that's something that we need to figure out. Where do we put it? If we put it on a future topic or a future agenda for whatever the purpose may be. What's really helpful, and I think because we have a cadence with our strategic plan, we're honing in on every single topic that we're discussing has to map back to one of those 6 priorities. And you maybe didn't see that at the very beginning of the presentation, but our strategic plan and our vision really guides that work. So I think it's always a good question to ask, is that something that is in alignment with the strategic plan? If so, how? If not, then where does that leave us, and where might we go from there? But we also have been involving at least one other member of the board in those planning sessions, so that there's more than just even the board president and the superintendent's purview. But again, that's something that we're trying to really be proactive about, so we're mapping that out. In fact, one of the first items that we'll have at our upcoming special meeting next Tuesday is to set more or less a direction for the next 6 months or so, because we also recognize there'll be a new board coming in. And with that new board, there'll be an opportunity for what does that onboarding process need to look like. We often also like to look at least one retreat a year. And that usually is a full day experience. And that gives us an opportunity to really set the tone or the stage for what are those things that we're going to be working through. The other thing that really helps with that is that we have to mirror kind of decisions that are governed by law. For example, a budget has to be approved by June 30th of every year. The calendar, when we're talking about decisions that may go into that. Ideally, we're approving that by middle of the year, December, January or so. The board actually has flexibility to go as late as the end of the school year, but that would also make it really difficult for the community. So those are just a couple of examples. We have a pretty good rhythm and routine to that. I think anytime there's, again, a new member or new members, there's an opportunity to reflect on that, reset maybe on some of those things. But anything else you would add to that response?
Mr. Clausen?
First of all, that's a wonderful question. The board is very methodical in the process, and one thing I've learned as a board member is there's really never any surprises. Everything is put out there in advance. You have plenty of time to review the agenda, all the supporting documentation. So, all around, it's a process that, has been fine-tuned. I've been on the board for 8 years, and I have to say the last probably year and a half is the smoothest this board has ever ran, and it's primarily because of strategic plan. We had a retreat, we focused on the 6 big blocks, if you want to call them that, and everything we do, as Dr. Summers indicated, we focus on one of those blocks, and does it apply? And if it doesn't, then we really need to do a deep dive and figure out why are we even talking about this if it does not relate to one of the aspects of the strategic plan.
So to piggyback off of Mr. Clausen, another thing Mr. Clausen taught me when I first was elected is this board work? Is this the role of the board? So anything that we're looking at on our agenda and anything that's popping into my mind, like let's say, I don't know, let's say I want to see an elementary school have a rowing club, I don't know, or I want them to have basket weaving. Is that the board's role, and is that board work, and how does that apply, that's my thought and my agenda, how does that fit into the agenda of the board and the work of the board? The role of the board is not to run the schools, but to ensure that the schools are run well. And so that's what I always keep in the back of my mind when I'm working and when I'm talking and when I'm deliberating. I'm asking myself, what is the role? What is our role? And what does that look like? And how are we representing and advocating our community? I always think of the 4 things: the vision, I think of the structure of our board, I think of accountability, and I think of advocacy. And back to your question earlier about how the powers that be that surround us, that advocacy on behalf of our community and our kids is so important for me personally as a board member. And I think we each find that we have the things that we're passionate about and that are important to us. So advocacy is very important to me. So that's where I run. That's where my talent is. But we each bring something different to the table. This board does. You had another question, right? I'll get to you.
I guess my final was just, is there encouragement to look outside? I've been on board for a while. We weren't sequestered, obviously, we brought our life experiences and our values to the table. But we were very much encouraged not to look outside of the materials given to us in considering certain things. So in just the interactions, what you're deciding on or looking at, is it generally encouraged, generally not encouraged, to just keep it focused or otherwise look broad?
You know, with any decision that we make, we want to do our due diligence. So it's very common for us to do our own independent research, to contact the respective team member, ask questions, become informed. And sometimes we're going down one path, and due to the independent research of one board member, we take a left-hand turn and go a different direction. You're welcome.
And I do think, just to add one more comment there, it's important that we are, in our leadership role, presenting as close to a 360-degree view of an issue as possible. Clearly, we have resources that we will rely on in-house, if you will, but I also think it's important. I mean, we're constantly looking beyond just to learn from, well, what's working or what's not in other systems. So it's very typical, especially of 178 districts in our state, where we can say, hey, what is sort of the trend that we're seeing or noticing? Not that that necessarily is driving us any particular direction, but then I also like to go even beyond that and kind of think in terms of our national viewpoint as well. And I've had the privilege to not only have a network that's very Colorado-driven, but I've had, and the board has been really supportive of me even having more of a national opportunity to expand that view, to look at, you know, what are some of the things that are on the cutting edge, and is this something that could work for us? And then coming back through that local control lens, it's always just a really good avenue to say, yeah, let's keep our minds open to what's out there, but then be very deliberate again about what are the values that are driving the work as it pertains to the community that we serve.
I think there's value in innovation and due diligence, and I can give you multitude of examples of where we've looked at what are other districts doing different when we're faced with a challenge. And sometimes it may come down to, it often actually comes down to, we'd love to do this based on what we've researched, but there's always budget constraints. But yeah, I think we value research. Linda, you had a question?
Mm-hmm.
Did you say something that they have to have voted in the last election, or did I misunderstand that?
Not the petition signers, but the candidate has to have been a registered elector within the school district the past 12 months. So I will go to the county elections database and determine that each candidate indeed has been a registered voter for at least 12 months. And if they've only moved to the county 8 months ago, they would not be eligible.
Okay, so so the criteria for the signers is registered voter in our district boundaries?
Yes, yep. Just an active current voter, and I have access to a county database and a state database to make sure I'm looking at the most recent information. They could have become a registered voter the day before they signed the petition, and that's sufficient for the signers.
Just a reminder to please repeat the questions.
Oh, yes.
We're
Oh, yes.
interested in getting the answer out there, we're forgetting that. But just to clarify, the candidate has to live in the board
Director district,
district that they're running for.
yes.
The petition signers don't have to be in that same director district. And then in terms of voting, voters can vote for more than one, well, I guess one person in each director district that's running.
Yes, the question had to do with our director district representation, and who is eligible to vote. And yes, indeed, each candidate must be a current resident of the director district for which they will serve. We do have the 5 director district representation model. However, all voters are able to vote for a candidate from each of those districts. So you will all see the same ballot laid out with the candidates' names running for each of the 4 seats, and you will be able to select one candidate from each of those 4 seats. Is there another component to that question?
I think the other thing I heard, if I heard it correctly, is that anyone residing in the district boundary as a whole is eligible to sign a petition to endorse a candidate to be able to run for that director.
Yes.
So they do not have to come simply from that director district boundary.
Right, and that's part of the petition verification process. If you know, Jane Doe signs the petition for 2 petitions for both of the candidates for Director District 1, the earliest signature will be the one that is valid. Like if she signs for candidate 1 on August 10th, and then signs the petition for the same director district but a different candidate on August 11th, the earliest signature will be valid. The second signature would be invalidated.
But Jane Doe could sign a petition for a Director District 2 candidate and a Director District 1 candidate.
Yes.
You can still sign multiple petitions for different director districts, but not for the same director district. Did you have another follow-up question?
Great
Okay.
detail.
You had a question. No? Oh. Any other questions? Fire 'em away.
So, tons of growth in Montana right now. What is the board's role in new schools or classroom size and stuff like that?
Oh, wow.
Because we've
How much
got
time? I'm going to encourage you to.
hundreds, if not thousands of people coming in, and it's like, holy cow, how is existing,
So I'm going to try to answer this truly as briefly as I can.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I will repeat the question. And why I want to be careful not to go too far down this road in this setting is it kind of veers us a little bit away from the purpose really being around supporting board candidate interest. However, I'm going to make, it's okay, I'm not wanting you to apologize for it, but it is a very multi-layered view, and the board's role as it pertains to looking at the data. So as one example, we are constantly looking at our enrollment. We are always looking at future forecasts and demographic studies. You might be surprised to know that even with the amount of new housing development we've experienced over the past few years, if you really look at our enrollment, the trend has been very flat. Now, that does not mean that we aren't anticipating future growth. As a matter of fact, that is one of the topics that we will be deep diving as we kick off this year, and that will be aligning to our strategic plan through a priority around operational efficiency, facility improvement, and long-term planning. And in the event, and certainly there is a long history in the district, I came into, just from my tenure's perspective, a ballot initiative in 2019, which sought the approval of the voters for the construction of a new elementary school. The vote from our voters at that time was not to support the construction, but the board is the only one that can take action to put a ballot initiative on a potential future election for the construction of a new school. Now, there's a whole lot of different things that I'm just kind of glossing over there, but at the end of the day, the board is very committed to thinking about how are we accommodating ultimately what is the growth that we're experiencing and how do we serve our kids as best we possibly can. There's a lot of different options to consider in that exercise, and as of now, I can tell you there's no immediate or imminent action that the board is necessarily putting in front of them as early as this year to pursue anything, but that's certainly something that will involve more study more deliberation as to future decisions that may need to be made regarding the potential of new construction, or just how do you accommodate new students as they're coming in. I'm going to leave it at that right now, because there's just it's a very loaded question, and I think it's a very important one. Is there anything that you two would add to what I just outlined there?
You know, in being respectful of everyone's time, I'll just rest
leave it at that.
on what Dr. Summers says.
It's okay. And come to future work sessions, and we will be having additional conversation about that topic.
But actually, let me interject. One thing that we're always concerned about is class size, how our kids are performing, and it is a constant discussion, both on the growth of the district, and perhaps one of the bigger issues that we've been dealing with for quite some time is the compensation of our teachers and team members. You know, we're one of the highest performing districts in the state, but we're one of the least funded. And we are losing a lot of our incredible teachers to other districts that sometimes are paying 20, 30% more than us. And, you know, for prospective candidates, one of the challenges that you'll deal with is to figure out a way to bridge that gap, and what we could do to keep our incredible teachers that unfortunately we're losing too frequently.
Very well said.
Well, and I would add that the Board of Education cannot increase taxes. The Board of Education can listen to community members and feedback and advocacy, and then decide to ask the community, what say you as a community? So when regardless of what the community says, those challenges still exist for the Board of Education to figure out ways to navigate that. And when we figure out ways to navigate that, we're basing our decisions and our thought processes often off of what is the input and recommendations of those that have a better qualification to be able to present that information. I'm not a demographer. I'm not an accountant. But so I rely on personally and lean into what do our experts say, and then making those, then deliberating on that, researching from other sources and advocacy, and trying to deliberate and make the best decision possible based off of the information that we have to use at our fingertips. Would you say you agree?
I concur.
All right. All right, we are 10 minutes over, so let's do one more question, and if there aren't any other questions, then we are always open to answering any questions and are available as well. Any one more last questions? Yes, sir.
So, just generally speaking, in the future, you never know, but in your past experience, have you been left alone at home after the meeting, or is this, from a community standpoint, you find members reaching out to you unnecessarily on off hours or otherwise? You kind of hit on that, but are issues left at the meetings, so to speak?
Can I take that one?
Yes.
You know, I would say the majority of the time, yes. You know, and quite frankly, it really depends upon how open you want to make yourself to the public. If you look at the website, I have my office number for a long period of time. I had my cell phone number. But, you know, quite frankly, the community as a whole is very respectful. You know, occasionally when I'm shopping or at a sports event, I might have a parent come up and say, well, what do you think about this? But, you know, all around, it's a very respectful community, and I haven't had any significant issues by any means.
I think also making sure that you are setting, as a board member, if you can set office hours. We as board members, I think we have a tendency to, if there's a disagreement on an issue, it stays in the boardroom, and we are still very respectful of each other. In the beginning, personally, I wanted it all. I wanted all the feedback, all the thoughts. I wanted to hear from everybody all the time. And what I learned is that was interfering with my time at church, my time with my children at their dance recitals. I'd be in the middle of a dance recital and my phone's pinging because somebody wants to let me know what they think. And it's important that they have that redress. It's important that they get to have their voice heard, but there's also an appropriate time and place, and just setting boundaries is important.
Closing words?
Well, once again, thank you for being here. And just let me know. Give me a call if you want to have any questions, you want to meet. I've been on this board a long time, and my goal was to leave this board in a better position than I found it. I don't know if I did that or not, but whoever is elected, I want to do everything we can to get you up to speed and get moving along. And knowledge is power, and the more you know about this position, the responsibilities, and the great blessing it is to serve our community will be very helpful for you in making the decision if you should run for the board or not.
I think Mr. Clausen said it well. And again, I want to thank Mr. Clausen for his time on this board. His seat is open, so regardless of what happens in November, we will be a new board because we will have at least one new board member and potentially 4 new board members, with me being the only board member that is not up for election until 2025, and that will be my time served. But we welcome you all to ask questions and I applaud you all for being here. And at the end of the day, it actually takes all of us as a community. These are our schools, all of our schools across the entire school district, from Palmer Lake Elementary to Monument Academy High School. These are all our schools. These are all our kids. We all live together in this community. We all shop. We all play. This is just, and D38 is a good community. My last word of advice to any potential candidate is hold yourself high and hold your head high, because inevitably during campaign time, you'll find that somebody's going to attack your integrity and say things that you didn't even know were true about you. And then on the flip side, somebody will say something on behalf of you that, again, you're like, that's not the integrity of who I am either. So just hold your head up high and when you're campaigning. And this is a very responsive community, and we're all very passionate about the education of our kids. That's why we're all in this room right now. So I commend you all for being here. So thank you. Dr. Summers?
Well, I'll just echo that appreciation and gratitude. It's truly an honor. And as I mentioned earlier, just a privilege to serve just such a distinguished group of community members who are all my bosses. And I am just really looking forward to what this next few months will bring. I'm sure lots of fun, lots of excitement. And by the way, our kids start school on August 15th. So we're really excited to welcome them. They may not be as quite excited, but I'm also seeing parents that are like, yes, they're coming back. Just a quick reminder, and again, just an appreciation to our full panel here. And then we will be posting this video on our webpage. I think we're going to try to get it up in the next day or two, along with other resources that you'll have linked from the presentation, the video itself. And then we are open to any questions that any of you have at any given time. So thank you for your attendance. Those of you that are here, those of you that are going to view this later, thank you for your interest, and good luck.
Thank you all.